My name is Isidore Hefter. My friends call me Izzy. I was brought up in Brooklyn, New York, and after marrying and living in Brooklyn, we were in Manhattan for a dozen years, and I raised my family in Long Island, and we recently came to Sullivan County to settle here. My father, now going back to my father, he found himself as all European Jewry in 1939 with the beginning of the war. His family split up. They did not leave. The men sort of left the home. The women stayed behind to watch the property. Nobody had, of course, ever imagined the horrors that were to come. Rolling forward, he and his brother were sent to a work camp, not a concentration camp, it was a work camp. If any of you have seen Schindler's List, there were some scenes of the Jews in the work camps. The work camps were terrible work camps. There was always someone being killed basically for no reason. And I remember asking my father, who had seen Schindler's List, I said, "Daddy, was it really like that?" And I remember his expression. He said, "It was exactly like that." That was his expression, exactly like that. And because I had remembered growing up in the home, that he would basically say, we would be in the camp and they would just shoot somebody for no reason. Well, anyway, even though nobody knew of the horrors that were to come, this was in the first year or two of the war, he knew this was not a good place to be, and things would only get worse. So, as luck, and there is some luck here, as luck would have it, someone in the camp from his town approached him and said, "Aaron, we have a place where we can escape to. Would you come with us?" They needed my father. There were two brothers, but they needed my father because for some reason, and I don't know how this is, my father had some money. Not much, but he had some money. These two brothers were from a very, very, very wealthy home, but they lost their money. And that's the subject of another story. So they said to my father, "We can escape because we know where to go." Now, I asked my father many times, "How did you just escape? How did you escape?" He said, "Izzy, it wasn't that hard to escape, but there was no place you could go, so you would just die." Okay, so these people, Strenger was the last name, had made arrangements with this Gentile family that we may come. You should expect us. Well, in one night, as my father had told the story, in the dead of winter, they found their way to escape. And he tells me they were freezing cold. It was horrendous. And so they escaped the work camp, which was in Sanok, Poland. It was in an area called Galicia. They always used to joke to my father, "Oh, you're a Galician." But and they had to, in order to get to the house of these Gentiles, these Polish people, they had to cross the Sanok River, the Sans River. Now, I had visited Poland back in about 1999, and I saw these places, and I'll go into that a little later. But so they couldn't cross. It was the three of them. It was my father and these two other gentlemen. And bear in mind, my father was born 1911, so he was already 30 years old when this was happening. And they were the same age. they couldn't cross the river to get to the other side because they couldn't use the bridge. There were SS guards on the bridges. And they had to cross the river. So to their luck, it was the dead of winter, and they weren't sure if this river was frozen or not. Mm-hmm. Now, I saw this river about 25 years ago. It was not a small river. I mean, I compared it to the Hudson River. It wasn't as big as the Hudson River between Manhattan and Jersey, but maybe half as much. So it was a lot. The water, I saw it in the summertime. The water was rushing. It was something. Well, anyway, as my father told the story, he said, what do we have to lose? We cross the river. If we die, we die. We don't have a choice. As luck has it, there wouldn't be a story if you didn't make it. So they crossed the river and they got to the house. So now three people showed up, and the name of the people was Aniela and Jan Rakasova. They took them in immediately. They took them in, they took care of them. Now, needless to say, if you were caught by the Germans doing this, they would kill you, they would kill your entire family, and they would burn your house. That was the punishment. Well, the Raksovas had 3 daughters, as well as the husband and the wife. Now, I often ask my father, what type of people were they? At least superficially, what were they like? And it was interesting. She, the wife, was a devout Catholic. So anything that the Nazis stood for, she was against. And the husband was a fierce communist. So he also, anything that the Nazis stood for, he was against. It was a weird combination, but these people were righteous beyond belief. And they had, again, these 3 daughters. Now, it's interesting, there were 3 people that were now in the household. The first morning that came, one of the Strenger brothers said he wanted to sneak into town to see what's going on. Well, needless to say, he did sneak out. Nobody ever heard from him again. He never came back. That was it. My father figures they must have caught him, shot him, and killed him. So now it was my father and this man, Strenger. Now, my father made himself, it was a tiny house. My father made himself very useful. They had Marisha, who's a 4 or 5-year-old girl. She was very smart, and I met her. And she's still alive. She's about 90. Well, if she was 4 years old in 1942, you could do the math. So my father would try to blend in the house to be as useful as possible. He formed a beautiful relationship with this little girl. There was also a 13 and a 15-year-old daughters. And I remember what he used to tell me, helping out in the house, he would do the Christian catalysms with her to put her to sleep. He would refer to it as the Kriya Shema, which is our Jewish custom of prayers that we say before. And he would show me how he would do it with her, and he made himself. They loved him. They loved him. And this went on, and he was hidden for 2 years. 2 years. And there were times where they had, where some relatives of the Rockosovas came over and they saw that there were Jewish people hiding and they threatened to expose them to the Nazis. And there were times when my father said, I'll go out and hide in the woods. I can't, endanger you like this. But somehow they got over all these difficult points. Now, these Polish righteous people were unbelievable. My father would tell me stories that when they would smoke, the man of the house, Jan, would give my father the cigarettes that had the real tobacco, and he would smoke I don't know what else the cigarettes had. Maybe it had weeds, who knows? And they were so accommodating that on Passover, again, my father was, to think that my father wanted to keep a semblance of Passover is a true act of faith in such, who knows, who would care under these circumstances. But somehow he prided himself that he kept track of the Jewish calendar, because the Jewish calendar was very, it has the leap years are a whole month. It's very different than the Julian calendar. And he kept track, and he figured what day Passover was. And he also figured what day Yom Kippur was. Somehow, even though, of course, he didn't have non-kosher food, but it was always very important for him to fast on Yom Kippur. And after the war, by the way, he found out that he did count things correct. He wasn't 100% sure at the time, but that's what he found out afterwards. And anyway, and during Passover, they would actually clean out the oven to allow him to bake matzah. So he would bake his own matzah, then they would bake their own bread, and they would eat together. So, so they were so, they treated him as a member of his own family. Now, so that's the story that we always heard. And, and I was going to say in the beginning, telling this story in this time with the anti-Semitism, when I originally had spoken to Hope to do this, it was a different world at the time. We had no idea of the emerging anti-Semitism that we could never fathom we would see in Europe and the world as well as in the United States. And this is such an inspiring story I think it's a story of hope, defiance, bravery, and love in the face of darkness. And, but how did this, speaking about this now, there's a very personal element as well, because we have reconnected, and maybe Pearl will start to show the pictures.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's exactly what I want to do.
Okay, so we
That
have.
is Izzy's pharmacy picture, by the way. We'll come back to that.
Well, I have to see which one you're doing. Okay, that is the first one.
That is not Izzy's pharmacy picture.
That's the end.
The first one was Izzy's pharmacy picture.
Oh, you were showing. Okay, so what happened was my father, after the war, again, so I'm going to try to cut it short to without lose more time. After the war, these people loved my father so much. They have a picture of him now. Still, the grandchildren have that picture of my father on the wall. And my father tells me, or he had told me, that they even spoke to the older girls, the Mrs. Aniela Roxova, and the older girls, they loved him so much, she even asked him if he would marry them. I forgot which one. But anyway, he said they were gorgeous.
So who was?
No, so this here is Marisha. Wait, so what happened? That's my father. So what happened was my father lost contact with her in the mid-90s.
Yeah.
In the mid-90s. This is Marisha. She was 4 years old. She was the one that my father did the prayers with. Her daughter got a position in Kalamazoo, Michigan, as an assistant professor in Maryland, her daughter. And she sent for her mother, Marisha, to come visit her. Marisha said, we have to find Aaron Hefter. Again, she was 4 years old at the time. We have to find Aaron Hefter. They found my father. They called him. They were on the phone for hours. And then my father called me and told me what happened. So we said, we have to meet these people. She's in Michigan. My parents then lived in Staten Island. We flew them into Newark. That's Marisha and her daughter, Hanka. Hanka, at the time, was about 30, and Marisha must be 50. This is the mid-90s. And we flew them in, and we spent time in Staten Island. My mother got to meet them. Oh, what's the next picture?
So this is the first time.
This is the first time that my father meets Marisha.
This one. Yeah.
Since the 1940s.
I'll help.
So now, then we went to Poland.
You decide to go to Poland with whom?
Okay, so here is Marisha again.
This is Izzy.
This is
Just in
me.
case you can't recognize him.
This,
And who's this Izzy?
wait, this is Marisha standing up. Again, now she's older. So this is
Marisha then.
older. Now this is Aniela. She's 98 years old. This is the woman that opened the door for my father.
That's for
Aniela Raksova. This is the woman that in 1942 or 43 opened the door and let my father in. That's my daughter next door, Serena. Serena was in the 8th grade at the time, and I wanted her to come with me.
And what do you see on the wall, Izzy?
And now, this is a
Turn
picture.
around.
This is a picture I'm watching. This is a picture. Now, this past April, my brother, who lives in Israel, visited them. It was not the first time. He visited them in Poland because in Israel, as in the United States, they have programs where upon graduating high school, a lot of the kids in these Jewish day schools go to Poland to learn about the Holocaust. But my daughter-in-law, my brother's wife, was disappointed because of the war in Israel. They canceled it this year. My sister-in-law. So she went there and she visited them. So these are pictures of their home just this past April. And on their wall, they have a picture of my father.
And of your brother.
Well, my brother, that's a newer picture.
Yeah, that's
Well, yes, that's the
But this is the point of that sentence.
The point is
So you
that
lined it up. And on that wall, there's a picture of my father.
the filmmaker.
Over coffee this morning.
yes, and what's the next slide?
The next slide is
Okay, so this is just to show the future generation. That's me.
when they say you save one life.
You save a world.
Here's the script.
So this
This
is
is the world
subsequent
that
generation,
Daniela's saying.
and this is some of my grandchildren.
So these are the children of Serena who, with the picture, they saw before my daughter that went with Izzy. My
Yes,
daughter.
that's the daughter.
These are her
that came-
children now. My daughter is in the late 30s.
And you have another daughter.
Yeah.
Who's
Yes,
on
I
a
have
picture here, right? You have a daughter.
I don't know the daughter as well. I don't know if I have a picture.
And there's a picture and two
Well, I have six grandchildren altogether between my two daughters. And this is just a picture of my parents, my father and my mother, enjoying themselves in Florida. And there's a picture of them at some affair. My father passed away in 2002, so it's a while ago. And then just here, just to show you save a person, you save a generation, is my daughter again.
By the way, there's Frida Marcos.
And there's Frida Marcos, my mother-in-law,
Frida.
who is Pearl's grandmother.
And Evelyn's mom.
Yes, and there, of course,
Oh, sorry, I'm clearly not great at this, so let's go back here. Thank you, don't laugh at me, fun, I can hear you.
That wasn't me.
Oh. You know, when you write in direct film, you don't have to know about things like this. And people. And I am now Izzy's people. So thank you
Thank you.
very much. You're welcome. This is the visit
Now,
of
this
your
is-
mother, right?
over here, this is the visit, this is my brother, who visited Poland just this past April. This is Marisha, who's gotten a little older,
Yeah.
right? And these are, and here is the families, here's Marisha, her two daughters, this is Hanya, and this is Lucinda. Here is my nephew, and here is Marisha's husband.
I'm the other nephew.
Oh, and then the other nephew, who fled with my brother from Israel.
I'm here.
Now, here in Poland is a local museum that they have that Hanka, who's Marisha's daughter, pointed out to my brother and his two sons, and they're pointing to something. Next one. So,
No, they're pointing to this,
This-
remember?
yes,
Because
so they're
men
pointing
behind it, they are
to
designed.
Aniela and Jan Raksova, who are noted in the museum as being righteous people.
And that wall is all righteous people,
And
right?
this is a wall of righteous people in the local museum. Next one.
But here's something you wanted to say about Marisha. She was called when there was another presentation. Will you read her quote as to what she wanted
Yes.
to share to the next generation before we conclude?
That's a good idea.
While he's looking it up, this is the headstone for your father, right?
Yes, and what is, since all his brothers and sisters perished in the Holocaust, when he passed away, we thought it appropriate to list their names. And some of them were married with children. So we figured it was appropriate to list their names on his tombstone. So that there'll be remembrance.
And here we see their names, just to be clear, we have what are the names, so we can remember them?
It's hard for me to read it.
Yitzhak,
I don't know if I
parents,
want to take that
right?
from.
Esther Shangle was the mother,
Esther Scheigel,
was the mother. Who else is here?
Pinchas.
Moshe, Yitzchak.
Go ahead.
Chaim, Alter. Yeled Acher, Asher Lo Yodeh Lanu Shmo. And another boy who they don't know his name.
Moshe Friday.
So he didn't forget. Did you find the quote?
Yes, I did. So, my sister-in-law was making some kind of presentation on the Holocaust, and she also in Israel, and she wanted to say a few words, and she called Hanka, who's in Kalamazoo, and she said, Hanka, I would love you to be here with me to do this presentation, as of course I would love her to be here, and I'd love Marisha to be here, because we had a wonderful time in the 90s when she came and visited us in Staten Island. Anyway, so we said to Hanka, if you were here, what would you want me to say, or what would you want to say? And this is what she said just a month ago or so. This is the granddaughter, Hanka. She said, I would say how proud I am of my grandparents.
Very moving.
I would say how proud I am of my grandparents, Aniela and Jan Raksova, as well as my mom and my aunts. When Aaron showed up at their doors, they acted out of a sense of altruism. It was an unselfish desire to help Aaron. This act of heroism was based upon deeply held religious beliefs and moral code. They were stronger than the fear of death, not only their own death, but the death of their family. These were her words. And it's just, you know, it's a very personal story, and I think it's a very universal story. And I think it shows, among other things, that we should all have faith in the future, no matter how grim things could look at times. And I thank you for being here.